Last year, I was fortunate enough to embark on a dream journey to Edinburgh. And yes, of course, I tried haggis and marvelled at the bagpipes, yet my true pilgrimage was to the sites where Scotland's greatest intellects resided. Today, I want to tell you, as if we were sharing a coffee, all that I uncovered about one of the most fascinating and, dare I say, most enigmatic figures within our discipline, John Napier. And I assure you that by the conclusion of this discourse, you shall perceive that labelling him the logarithm chap is a gross understatement, because this man was a true Renaissance man, a mathematician indeed, but also a physicist, astronomer, theologian, inventor, and was even accused of sorcery. His own neighbours nicknamed him Marvellous Merchiston. And indeed he was, so settle in, for we are about to journey to 16th century Scotland, an epoch of castles, monarchs, religious conspiracies, and a scientific revolution poised to erupt. To comprehend Napier, one must first understand his origins. He did not appear ex nihilo. He was born in 1550, and believe me, his lineage was a veritable who's who of Scotland at the time. On his father's side, the Napiers of Merchiston were lairds, that is, landed gentry with a long history of service to the crown. His father, Sir Archibald Napier, was not merely an aristocrat, he was none other than the Master of the Mint of Scotland. Imagine that, a job that demanded brutal mathematical precision to manage the mines and the coinage. And here's a fun fact, Sir Archibald was merely 15 or 16 years of age when John was born. On his maternal side, Janet Bothwell, things get even more interesting. His maternal grandfather was a high judge, and his uncle, Adam Bothwell, was Bishop of Orkney. But he wasn't just any priest, he officiated the wedding of the famous and tragic Mary Queen of Scots, and also crowned her son, the future King James VI. So young John grew up surrounded by the most significant legal, political, and theological debates of the realm. And where did this family live? None other than Merchiston Castle in Edinburgh. When I was there, I could feel the history within its walls. It is a tower house, a fortress built for defence. In fact, during restoration works, a 26-pound cannonball was found embedded in a wall, a little souvenir from the Civil War of 1572. For Napier, that castle wasn't just a home, it was his laboratory, his sanctuary, the locus where for decades he would forge ideas that would alter the world. At the age of 13, he was sent to the University of St Andrews. At that time, Scotland was in the throes of the Protestant Reformation led by John Knox. This religious fervour marked him forever. But apparently the university wasn't up to par, and his uncle, the bishop, told his father, "Send him to France or Flanders, there he shall truly learn." And so it was. Although we don't have exact records, we know that he travelled throughout Europe. He probably studied in Paris, traversed Italy, and he must have received an exceptional education, because when he returned to Scotland in 1771, he was fluent in Greek, something extremely rare for the time, and irrefutable proof that he had received an elite education on the continent. Now, let us not conceive of Napier as an academic sequestered in his ivory tower. Far from it, he was a man of action, a laird with responsibilities. He married twice. First, he married Elizabeth Stirling from a very prominent family, with whom he had 2 children, including his heir, Archibald. Tragically, she died young. Then he married Agnes Chisholm, and with her he sired, brace yourselves, 10 more children. Yes, 12 children in total, a veritable dynasty. And he wasn't a passive landowner. He moved to one of his estates in Gardness and began researching how to improve crops. He even published a treatise on how to use common salt as fertilizer. He applied his scientific mind to everything. His life was completely intertwined with power. He was a devout Protestant, and he didn't mince words. He served on committees that went to speak with King James VI to ask him that he take a firm stand against the Catholics. In fact, in his most famous book on theology, which we shall discuss in a moment, he dedicates a passage to the king, where essentially he implores, "Your Majesty, pray cleanse your house and your court of papist influences." It takes real nerve to say that to a king. And his influence extended far and wide. His half-brother was a prominent judge, and his son Archibald became Lord Napier, complete with a peerage. In such a violent and treacherous era, Napier's prestige wasn't a luxury, it was an armor. His fame as a theologian protected him politically, and his fame as a mathematician gave him an international status that made him almost untouchable. His genius was his best insurance policy.
And now, my friends, we arrive at the heart of his mathematical legacy, at what changed science forever. Consider the dilemma. You are an astronomer, required to multiply gargantuan numbers with countless decimal places. A single error, and your calculations regarding a planetary orbit are rendered invalid. It was a rigorous, laborious task, fraught with opportunities for error. Napier dedicated 20 years of his life to solving this problem. In 1614, he published his magnum opus, Mirifici Logarithmarum Canonis Descriptio, or Description of the Marvelous Canon of Logarithms. His idea was absolutely brilliant. He didn't use algebra as we would today. Instead, he envisaged 2 points in motion, one advancing at a constant velocity, whilst the other retarded its motion as it approached its destination. The logarithm was the ratio between the distances traversed. The objective? To transform multiplications into additions and divisions into subtractions. As the great Laplace said, logarithms doubled the astronomer's life, and that is no hyperbole. Of course, his logarithms weren't like the ones we use today. The base was peculiar, circa 1/e, and the function was decreasing, yet the concept was present. Napier himself died before he could publish how he had constructed them, but his son Robert did so in 1619 in a work called Constructio. And there's a brilliant detail. In that treatise, Napier was already employing the decimal separator in a highly systematic manner. He helped popularize it throughout Europe. The news spread like wildfire. In London, a mathematician named Henry Briggs read the book and was so amazed that he decided to travel to Edinburgh solely to meet Napier. Imagine that meeting, 2 of the brightest minds of the time sitting in Merchiston Castle. Briggs made a key suggestion. What if we rescale everything so that the logarithm of 1 is 0 and the logarithm of 10 is 1? That is, the base 10 logarithms we all recognize. Napier not only agreed, but admitted that he had already thought of something similar. But he was already old and ill, so he passed the torch to Briggs. That collaboration yielded the logarithms that dominated science for 350 years. But Napier didn't stop there. In 1617, the year of his death, he published another book, Rhabdiology. There he presented his mechanical calculators. The most famous are Napier's bones, a set of rods, frequently of ivory or bone, inscribed with multiplication tables. With them, a complex multiplication could be converted into a simple addition, a brilliant device. When I was in Edinburgh, I was able to see those bones at the National Museum of Scotland, an incredible experience. And then there is the promptuary, a far more complex version 2.0, featuring strips and fenestrated templates. It's considered one of the first calculating machines in history. I'm dying to visit Madrid and see the copy they have at the National Archaeological Museum. And if that weren't enough, he also developed rules for spherical trigonometry, which are incredibly important for navigation and astronomy. Napier's analogies and Napier's circle simplified a multitude of complex formulae, a sheer genius. Now get ready for the strangest and most fascinating side of Napier, because in his time, the line between science, religion, and magic was very, very thin. It turns out that for Napier, his most important work wasn't Logarithms. No, not at all. It was a theology book he published in 1593, a simple discovery of the whole revelation of St. John. He authored it in English, not Latin, so that the layperson could read it. In that book, he used his mathematical mind to analyze the book of Revelation and predict the end of the world. He calculated it for some time between 1688 and 1700, and the book became an international bestseller. It made him a superstar of Protestant theology. But here's the kicker. With this air of a solitary genius surrounded by strange gadgets, the townsfolk began to whisper. They said he was a magician, that he made deals with the devil. It was said that he always carried a black spider in a little box, and that he had a black rooster as his familiar spirit. There are two brilliant anecdotes that prove it. Once, to uncover a thief among his servants, he covered his black rooster in soot, put it in a dark room, and told everyone to go in and touch it, for the enchanted rooster would reveal the culprit. The result? The thief was the only one who emerged with clean hands, for he feared touching the creature. Pure psychology. Another time, fed up with a neighbor's pigeons eating his grain, he scattered peas soaked in brandy across the field. The next morning, to everyone's astonishment, he simply went and collected the pigeons, which were too drunk to fly. And this isn't just folklore. There's an actual contract in which a certain Robert Logan hires him to search for treasure, and asking him to use all art and ingenuity, a fancy way of saying, employ your arcane arts if necessary. What's fascinating is that his reputation as a magician wasn't a contradiction to his scientific mind. It was rather the popular interpretation of his genius. The same brilliant logic he used to invent logarithms, he applied to solving everyday problems in ways that seemed like pure magic to others. Napier's impact was immediate and seismic. The great Johannes Kepler used logarithms to process Tycho Brahe's mountain of data, and thus was able to formulate his famous laws of planetary motion. Without Napier, Newton might not have had the foundation for his theory of gravity. That's how important he was. Kepler dedicated a book to him, unaware that Napier had already passed away. And very soon after, based on his ideas, the slide rule was invented, that tool that was a symbol for engineers and scientists for 3 centuries, until the advent of pocket calculators. His name is everywhere. In electrical engineering, we have the Neper, which is a unit of measurement. There's a giant crater on the moon named after him, Neper. In Spanish and French, we refer to natural logarithms as Napierian, and even an asteroid, 5558, bears his name. When I was in Edinburgh, I went out to look for traces of him. I saw his portrait from 1616, a year before he died, where he looks wise and serene. I saw his statue on the facade of the National Portrait Gallery of Scotland, and I went to St. Cuthbert's Church, where his remains are interred. There is a splendid monument there, inspired by the frontispiece of his book on logarithms. But without a doubt, the most vivid tribute is Edinburgh Napier University, a modern and vibrant university literally built around Napier's castle. His home is now the heart of a centre of knowledge. I can't think of a better tribute. The university's motto is, "Without knowledge all is in vain." I think John Napier would have loved that. So as you can see, John Napier was much more than a mathematician. He was a man of his time, a bridge between profound faith and emerging reason, a theologian who wanted to decipher God's plans, and an inventor who dreamed of freeing humanity from the drudgery of calculation. Although he might have preferred to be remembered for his prophecies, history remembers him for giving science one of its most powerful tools. He was a silent architect of the scientific revolution. The next time you use a logarithm, or simply when you marvel at the computational power we possess today, remember that Scottish laird, his castle, his black rooster, and his brilliant mind, which from the mists of Edinburgh helped us see the stars a little more clearly. Well, I have to go now. The next class starts, but I hope this trip... I trust you enjoyed learning about John Napier's life as much as I enjoyed recounting it to you. See you soon for another coffee and more fascinating tales from the history of mathematics.
History's a puzzle with numbers that shine. New Euclid to Pythagoras, crossing the line. Geometry is harmony, circles that flow. Calculus whispers, let's watch it all grow. Counting the stars, math's a work of art. Algebra's magic, letters and signs, solving the mysteries one equation at a time. From ancient Mesopotamia to today's bright screens, math tells the story of all